Greetings to you. This is Brandon, the freight broker with Alliance Logistics, and I hope this message finds you in the best of health and spirit on another beautiful Monday morning that we've been blessed to see. I want to thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. I understand that there are many things that you want to accomplish, and out of respect to your time, we're going to get into the business of things today, and what we're going to be discussing is the good and the bad of using a factoring company. Now, as freight brokers, most of us, especially when we first start out, we are going to more than likely choose a factoring company to work with. The purpose of having that factoring company is to have a third party to come in and buy your invoices. So that way you now don't have the responsibility of paying each carrier after a load is completed. If you were responsible for paying the carriers every time a carrier finished a load, then you would be responsible for paying that carrier. Well, in this case, what you do is you assign your invoices to a third party who's going to pay your carriers. They're going to pay you your commission when that load is finished. Now, that is a good part of factoring. That's a good part about factoring. It allows you the comfort and surety of knowing that you can work with a lot of different carriers and you don't have to worry about having to pay those carriers out of your own cash reserve. You can use the credit that's extended to you through the factoring company, which is a very good thing. It's going to give you that comfort of being able to move loads all over the nation. You're not limited to moving 10 loads or 20 loads. You can move as many loads as your capacity can handle. So that's the good part about factoring. Another good part about factoring is when you're working with a customer, you're working with customers from all over the nation. You, as a small business person, you probably are not going to know a whole lot about that customer's payment history, his credit history, how well he pays his bills, how well that company pays its bills. And we know that, companies get into trouble just like individuals get into trouble. And sometimes they don't pay their bills. Well, you don't have the responsibility of going out and doing a credit check on each of those customers. That particular factoring company is going to do that because they are extending the money. So they're going to credit check those customers to make sure that those customers are paying their bills. The next thing I want to get into is, back up a little bit, is there's two types of factoring. One is recourse factoring and one is non-recourse factoring. The one we're talking about today here is recourse factoring, meaning that if your factoring company does not receive their money from your customer, you must pay. Okay? So that is why you want to have that credit check in place to make sure that particular customer is credit worthy. They pay their bills. Okay, so that's two good parts about a factoring company is it gives you the surety of knowing your bills are going to get paid, and of course it is going to credit check your customers. And it's also going to allow for you to establish good credit. In this business, when we first start out, we don't have any credit built. We don't have a reputation built yet. So when you start to pay those carriers and you're paying those carriers on time, now you're building a credit history. And that's very important. When you first start out, you may have in the system what's called an N, as in November rating, meaning that you're too new to rate. So now when you start to build some momentum, you start to work with carriers, you're going to start to build a credit profile that says, number one, either you pay or you don't pay your bills. And when you pay your bills, you're going to be able to make future relationships with other carriers and build your business. So those are some good points about factoring. Now, I want to get into some things that are not so good when it comes down to using a third party to finance your accounts receivables. Okay, first thing is it's expensive. It's a bit expensive to use a factoring company as a freight broker. Most factoring companies that I have researched charge about 5%. and that's 5% on each and every invoice. A particular factoring company I was dealing with charges 5% plus $5 on every single invoice. So for example, let's say you have a $1,000 invoice and the total amount is $1,000. We'll do that for the sake of simplicity when it comes to the numbers. And you're paying 5% on that invoice for that factoring company to front the money to pay your carrier and to pay you. So now that 5%, of course, is a $50 charge on a $1,000 invoice. So 5% of $1,000 is $50, plus the $5 charge that is charged for a processing fee for using the factoring company. So that's $55 on that one particular invoice. So $55 is your profit. That cuts into your profit. So that's a substantial cut. That's a lot of money that we're leaving on the table, because you have to figure, you're that's on every single invoice. So if you do 100 invoices that month, at different numbers, you have to factor in that 5% each and every time. So that is going to get fairly expensive for your business. That's going to, put a huge cost on the table. And, as freight brokers, we're always trying to ensure that we keep our cost at a very manageable number, because the more cost we alleviate, the more profit we're able to produce. So it's expensive. The next part about it is, and some people look at this as a good thing. I absolutely think it's not a good thing. And that is that factoring company, it comes in and it takes over your accounting. You're not going to be doing any of the back and forth with your customer to figure out, what's going on with this particular invoice. Has it been paid? The factoring company does all of that. And you don't know, how well that factoring company handles its relationships with customers. You don't know how that works. So you're opening your customer up to a third party, and you don't know how they, in particular, how they do business. So that's something, to me, that's not a very good thing at all. The other side of that is factoring companies, a lot of times they move payments from invoice to invoice. I'll give you an example. I had a $4,350 invoice that was due to be paid. And what happened was they moved $3,300 from a $3,300 invoice and paid the $4,350 invoice. Well, that in turn left the $4,350 invoice short $1,050. So when I saw that on the chargeback report and saw that invoice was short paid, I'm wondering, hey, why did it short pay? There was no freight damage. The freight did not arrive late. All of the freight was there. Why did it short pay? Well, it short paid because they moved it from a $3,300 to a $4,350 invoice, and it left it short $1,050. So, they just said, okay, the customer short paid. Now it's my responsibility to find out why it's short paid. They don't come in and tell you, okay, this is why it's short paid. I had someone explain to me that they don't call every customer to find out, why it's short paid. Well, that's your money. In a sense, it's not their money, because they simply take the money from you when the customer short pays. You have a reserve, and they take the money out of your reserve. You have to pay that money back when that customer short pays. So now it's your responsibility to run after that customer and find out why that particular invoice was short paid. Now, you don't have probably a working relationship with someone over there, so it makes it a bit difficult for now you to jump into the chain all of a sudden. It's like, who are you? So that's a bad part about it, is you turn your accounting over to a third party, and that's not always going to be beneficial to you. So those are some of the things that you want to definitely keep at the front of your mind when you're considering a factoring company. Something that I think that you're going to want to do certainly when you start to decide whether you're going to deal with a factoring company is to take a look at the contract. You're going to want to make sure you read that contract very, very thoroughly. And of course, there are going to be some things that you don't understand because the contract is written for certain to benefit the factoring company, not your company. So that's not how it's written. So when you don't understand the language, the best thing to do is to get your attorney to take a look at it to make sure that it is, some of the things are in there. If you need to negotiate some things, you negotiate those things based off of, what your attorney has shared with you about what that contract is exactly saying. Also, be very aware of the termination agreement. Factoring companies generally, make it so that you have to notify them 90 days prior to your renewal date. And if you don't notify 90 days prior to your renewal date that you are interested in terminating your factoring relationship, then it automatically renews. And now you have an entire year that you have to wait or continue to do business with that particular factoring company, even though you may be ready to pack up. So know your contract and what it says. Know your termination dates, and when it's time to exit those agreements, you exit those agreements. Also, if you can negotiate a better rate, that would definitely be in your best interest. Most, again, like I said earlier, start at around that 5%, but every percentage point is a huge deal when it comes down to your profit margin. So if you can negotiate it to 4%, then of course that 4%, then that definitely will be in your best interest. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share with you today on factoring. We'll do a webinar at some point. We hadn't decided when that will be to go more in depth on factoring and the benefits of it to your company, and of course some of the things that are not so beneficial to your company. So you'll have to make a decision. At that point, do I get a line of credit? Do I get a factoring company? Do I get a loan from a bank? And what you have to understand is a line of credit or loan from a bank is going to be a bit difficult. It's a process to get those things in place for your business, because when you first start out as a business, you don't have credit in place. You have to build to those points. You have to build trade lines and do well with those trade lines. And then you'll be in a position to be able to go out and get a line of credit or get a loan from a bank, which is going to decrease your cost, because you're not paying a percentage amount on every single invoice that you have go out at that time. So that's going to save you a lot of money. So that's what we wanted to share with you today, and we'll get more in depth into that topic at another time. I want to thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a buzz at 470-427-2711, extension 101. Or if you're interested in, taking the leap and getting into the freight broker industry, you can definitely go and take a look at the packages that we offer as far as training is concerned. It is at www.training.alliancelogistics.net. Okay, I hope this helps. You have a wonderful day today and an even better day tomorrow. I want to thank you so much again for spending this time with me today. Have a great day, and we wish you well in all that you endeavor to do. Thank you.